Good evening and welcome to episode 5 of our Facebook Live series, Finding My Path. I'm Dan McPherson with Leaders Must Lead, and this week has been very interesting as I do continue to look for the right choices and the right strategy and fight to overcome a number of challenges. I hope that sharing those with you will continue to be of help. I also look forward to hearing some of your stories. I have some really exciting things to talk about today with some wins that my clients have had, a couple of lessons that I've learned, maybe a little bit the hard way in the last week and how I've dealt with things. And also, just to start, talk a little bit about the question of the day, which is how do you respond to tough feedback and how do you feel about sharing tough feedback? This is, I think, a difficult topic. It's tough feedback, so it should be. But it is a topic that comes up quite often, but typically not right at the beginning of a relationship. So it's more as you get a little bit further in. I find this comes up with clients when they ask my opinion about something, and I'm in a spot where I have to make a choice of telling them what I believe to be true that I know isn't what they want to hear, or what I know to be true that isn't the easy choice or isn't the easy option. I've had a number of situations over the last couple of weeks where that has been the case, where someone has asked me an opinion and said, hey, which of these two things should I do? This one is what I want to do. This is the one that is harder or costs more. And I've had to give that feedback to do the harder one. So that's something that is definitely important to keep in mind and to focus on. And I think dealing with that is a real test of where you stand as a business, where you stand as a person, how you're going to respond throughout your career. When you are faced with that moment of do I say what's easy or do I say what's convenient, as opposed to do I say what's hard or what is necessary, which choice are you going to make? Now, there's another piece there, too. In the world of internet and internet trolls, there tends to be a group of people who are comfortable saying the hard things, but they say them like a complete jerk. And of course, when you're talking to your clients or your friends, that shouldn't be the case. So it's partially about learning how to say the hard things and say them in an effective manner, to soften it a little bit, even as you're giving your opinion. And in my case, I try to take a couple of different paths to doing that. I may say, hey, I'll support you whichever that you prefer, whichever direction you choose to go. However, based upon this, and this, here's what I would have to recommend. Or, hey, this is your ship. This is what you're going to do. However, I have these concerns. And sharing those is important. If we back away from sharing them, then what good are we doing that person? How are we really helping that person? Now, on the flip side, when we receive tough feedback, it can be difficult. We show in how we respond to that tough feedback where and what type of a person we are and where our head is. If we respond by pausing and listening and taking it in and processing it and maybe asking questions, then we show that we're open to that feedback and we make it easier for others to talk to us. If we, on the other hand, get defensive and angry or upset or bitter about it, then we make it such that people don't want to give us feedback and don't feel comfortable doing that. And whether that's our team or our friends or people that work for us, whoever it might be, that's not a good situation. We want to create a situation where people feel open coming to us. One of the things that I try to do with each team I work with, including those that are contracted with me, my marketing team or my virtual assistant or whoever it may be, is that I will tell them, look, I want people who think if you see something that I'm doing that isn't right, you see something that I'm doing that strikes you as wrong or you feel is a poor choice, please call it out. Help me to be able to change. And me showing that openness, me being really upfront and very clear that I want that feedback is me trying to open those doors. It's also how I get better every day. So that dealing with that hard feedback with an open mindset is helpful, but so is sharing it with a compassionate mindset, recognizing where the person is. And if you have that tough feedback, take the time, have the courage to share it, but do so in a way that will help others move forward in a positive light. Also, one final tip on that is to offer it in a way that will allow them to make a choice. If you're providing tough feedback, it may be obvious to you. the decision may be really clear to you. It might be upfront, no problem, no brainer. That's fine. But we do things better when we make a choice. Even if it's my son and I might be talking about something that isn't that tough of feedback. And it's just which way would you prefer to do things in getting ready for bed? Would you prefer to finish up your homework and then take your shower, or would you prefer to take your shower and finish up homework? The choice doesn't really make a huge difference to me, but letting him make that choice matters to him. When we are sharing tough feedback with someone, that is no less true. So allowing them the opportunity to have all the information and letting them say, yes, I accept this feedback and I will make that choice, will result in a much stronger relationship going forward. What's the situation that you have a tough time sharing challenging feedback? Or what's one that you've had success with where it's gone well? I'm very interested to hear what your story might be. Share one in the comments, and I'll come back to it in a little bit. I would very much love to hear where you're coming from, or if you have any questions after you listen to this and you are curious about how you might handle a certain situation or how you might deliver a certain type of challenging feedback, go ahead and put it in the comments, and we will do our best to respond to that. So now, after we talk about this tough feedback and the importance of delivering it well, the importance of receiving it well, all of that is to create a relationship that is built upon trust. It's to create a relationship that is built upon moving a business forward and upon moving forward towards our goals. If we aren't candid with one another, we miss that opportunity. So now let's talk a little bit about what's going on in my world. We'll talk about some things that I've learned over the last week or been reminded of over the last week, and some great news from a couple of my clients that I'm excited to share with you as well. So first, the good news. Two of the main things that we talk about are building slowly and creating a ramp that gives us momentum over time. And we talk about the fact that price is irrelevant, that value is what matters. This week, we have good news on both fronts. One of my clients, you may have seen them their news being shared on the Facebook page, is Dogmite Games. They have scored a great relationship with White Wolf and are using that to escalate their business. They're one of the key providers of wooden gaming accessories for this worldwide company, and as part of the new launch of their new system for Vampire the Masquerade. Very exciting. It's been a slow build and a long time coming. It's exciting to see their success as we've been working on that relationship and a number of others for some time to come. More good news for them to come in the next couple of months as well. Second piece of good news from the clients today is proof of the price versus value mindset, that value is really what matters. I mentioned, I believe, an episode or so ago of a client who was really working on having the belief that they could offer, or they could ask for more money, that what they were providing was worth it as long as they provided the return on investment. And that was a tough conversation. That's something that this client she's amazing, but it's something that she struggles with. And today she found a success. She made the changes, stepped out there in faith, asked for the additional money, which is still below where she could be, but is a huge amount more than she'd been comfortable with in the past. And lo and behold, no objection at all, gaining clients, building a business. Why? Because as the client told her, this is worth it. There is no question that this is worth it. And since when there's no question, guys, that something is worth it, that you're getting more than what you pay for, then you're going to go forward and do business with that person. So those are a couple of success stories, a couple of other things going on this week. First of all, prioritize and execute. Just a reminder that in your world, as with anybody else, it's important to take all these things that are coming in and prioritize them into a clear order and then execute them from the most important to the least, but also from factoring in your urgency. So where did that come from in my world? This week, I took time to pause and rewrite all my to-do lists and get a grasp on where I'm going and where I'm at. I'm behind on a number of things that I wish I wasn't. I maybe bit off more than I could chew in a few places, but also I just needed to get my arms around it because a lot of exciting opportunities have come up. When I made my to-do list, there were 189 items on it. That's right, 189, and that's not all broken into the component parts. I did break it down into short term and long term. I took the short term and organized it into what's more urgent and what needs to be done sooner, and looked at the ones that if I do it, it'll make others easier, and got through it. But that it's important sometimes to just pause and reframe and get a good grasp of where you're at, and then prioritize and execute. The second thing that jumped up to me this week as as an important message, and you'll see a post about this coming out very shortly, is the importance of treating people well. I find that too many people that I encounter treat people poorly. They make judgments based upon what the person looks like, or how much they think they can do for them, or how much money this person might have. But the reality is that while we may all have different roles in this world, we all have value as a person and deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You think of the parking lot attendant or the restaurant server. The parking lot attendant, how many people just drive past that person and never say anything, or see them and only think of them when there's an issue with the machine or an issue getting out, versus the number of people that connect with and build a relationship and chat with that person and communicate the value and appreciation for what they do. Changes the world step by step, and it represents a lot about who you are. Same thing for the restaurant servers. They are out there. Serving is a tough business. I did it for a couple of years. I've worked in the restaurant world. It is a challenging business. I worked in retail. That's challenging as well. How do we treat those people who are trying hard to, they're doing their best and they fulfill an important spot, but sometimes they can get looked past or dismissed or treated as less than, and that's not okay. Treating people well is very important. A couple of other thoughts for today before we wrap up. Which series or strategies to keep going? This has been a challenging conversation for me that I've had with a number of people recently. I have a lot of different initiatives that are in play right now. I've talked to you about them a little bit, about the new website that's coming, and the webinar, the free webinar for time management training, and of course this series and the mastermind. But also I had started with a couple of other series, and there are ebooks and regular books and local events and speeches and any number of other things to deal with. So I have to step back and just look at the filter of where's my North Star and which of these fit within that, and of those, which ones will move us the furthest, the fastest as we go forward, which ones are to keep going. And that's been a tough call this week. I think this series has the ability to share some insight, some background, some behind the scenes to hopefully help you find your path as I'm searching for mine. So at the moment, I'm looking to continue that. I'd love your feedback. Let me know what you think. Should I continue this? Should I not continue this? Should I do something different with it? Let me know what your thoughts are. There are a couple of other series that for the moment I'm moving away from. One thing we're getting back to is posting shorter form content so that you have an opportunity to engage with that. 2-minute videos or 5-minute videos or 1.5-minute video that have tips or inspiration or motivation, as that's been something that has been powerful in the past. We're also going to continue using the daily quotes that are out there, as they receive quite a bit of positive feedback. Of course, the mastermind will continue, and we will do at least one live event in person a quarter as well. Some of the other things that we're holding off on a little bit more now are more of the walk the talk series, or the opportunity to do more paid online seminars at the moment. Those are a couple things that we're holding back on. I bring this up because I think in any business, you're going to have more possibilities than you have time. You're going to have more possibilities than you have resources. And you have to step back and just ask, which ones get me where I'm trying to go? Which ones get me there the furthest, the fastest, and step forward and do those. And then try them. And if they don't work or they don't grab hold, you can always walk away from them. 2 more. Dealing with things outside my control. Man, this was painful this week. This was so challenging and frustrating. I was making some progress, having a good week, and the next thing I know, somebody looks at my tires and says, Dan, your tires need to be replaced. So I go and have them looked at, and indeed, they did need to be replaced. And then my wife comes to me and says, man, my tires need to be replaced on her car. So we take her car in, and the tires do indeed need to be replaced. But lo and behold, it's not just that. It's also the brakes are 92% worn, and it needs new spark plugs and an oil change and an air filter and all of these different things that all combine to be nearly $3,000 unexpected. Now that's crushing. That could eat me up, right? You get a $3,000 bill out of nowhere, and it can just swallow you whole. And at that point, it can really cause you some issues. I believe that circumstances are 20%. So what happens is 20%, but how we respond to it is 80%. And I'm pleased that this time, not always has this been true, but this week, I took it a little bit in stride. I was like, man, this sucks. We've got to deal with it. We got to try and figure out where to come up with the money and how to move it around. But we have to get it done. It's necessary. It needs to happen for safety. It needs to happen to make things right. And so dealing with that thing outside of my control, it's a matter of which approach am I going to take. The result doesn't actually change, right? I still have the tough thing that's out of my control, that $3,000 bill. If I react poorly to it and I get upset and it stresses me out and I don't sleep and I don't focus on what I need to do and I don't move forward and I don't keep treating people well and have a good attitude, then all I'm doing is creating larger issues that come out of nothing. On the other hand, in that same situation, I can say, you know what, it's going to happen. I can't do anything about it. So now I can go and continue to move forward at work. I can continue to have a good attitude and treat people well. I can continue to look for opportunities to move. Same situation, two different responses, two completely different results on where it puts me in an emotional trajectory and also where it puts me in a business and a mindset trajectory. So think about that as you deal with things outside your control. There's a corollary to this that I think is worth sharing that's hit me a lot in the last few months. And that is the idea that 80% of what we worry about never comes to pass. Think about that for a minute. If you worry about 100 things, 80 of them are never going to happen. So if you consider how much time, energy, effort you spent worrying about that, and you added all that up, what's the value of that time? What's the value of that loss, of that pain, of that anxiety, of that stress? And if you said, I'm not going to worry about it, I'm not going to stress about it, I'm going to respond differently, even the 20% that did happen, you'd be in a better spot to be able to handle. So dealing with things outside of your control and doing so with a perspective that maybe you stop worrying about it in the first place and then deal with it differently when it happens will change your world. I know that it changed my week, and I'm pleased because in the past, in the past, that hasn't always been the case. I've had any number of times where I've made less than ideal choices. How about you? How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with things outside your control? What do you do that gets you into a better mindset or a better place to where that maybe gives you a better chance to have a good response? Like I said, I'm happy that I did this week, but there were many, many times that I have not. And I'm looking for more ideas as I continue to look for my way in the world. I'm looking for more ideas that can help me continue to have that path. Part of it is education and knowing the results of it and knowing that worry 80% doesn't come to fruition. But part of it is also me looking for that stability. What's another trigger that I can pull that'll help me have the right response? The last thought for today for me was just a couple of things that have come up in client meetings. I try to share with you guys some of the wins, like I did earlier, that are happening with clients where we got the proof of the price versus value and the success with that woman, and also where we saw the scaling of the business. Those are both good. So let's talk about two topics that I've dealt with that are becoming wins. They aren't all the way there yet, but they're two topics that I've dealt with one-on-one with clients over the last week. The first of these two is planning big and small. So when does this come up? This comes up when you have an opportunity that you're grabbing onto, but you have no idea. It could be wildly successful or it could be a struggling failure. It could also be somewhere in the middle, but the more pertinent part is that you have to make a plan that somehow accounts for both. And that's very difficult. One of the clients I work with, we didn't know what this new program that they were rolling out, that they were signing on to. We didn't know, would they get a success that would mean $5,000 to them, or would they get a success that would almost immediately mean $1 million to them? And it was literally that big of a spectrum in the possibilities. Now, the likelihood was somewhere in the middle. Maybe it could be 20 to 100,000, but the other possibilities were there, and you don't want huge success to break you as a company, but you don't want to put yourself out such that if it's a failure, that it breaks you as a company that direction either. So how do you do that? The conversations that we had were really about planning for both and then aiming sort of in the middle. So we said, all right, what is the worst case scenario? What does the worst case scenario look like? And when that happens, let's assume for a moment, let's game it out. When that happens, what are our choices? What are our next steps? What are the recovery plans? And you may think it's crazy to make these ahead of time. I will tell you it's a lot easier to make them ahead of time when you are in an objective place than when you are emotionally crushed by just having gotten the worst result. So it gives you those. Also, sometimes you will stumble upon things that you would do in the worst case scenario that will actually help you in the best case scenario, because they'll take a success and be able to push it further forward as opposed to being a recovery spot. The second is we say, all right, what about the best case scenario? If everything blows up, what are the problems we're going to encounter? Everyone knows the good you're going to get. You're going to get more money. You're going to get more opportunity. You're going to have more capital, more resources. All those things are great. But what are the pains? What could break? What could go wrong? And then let's solve for those. So now that we solve for those, sometimes that'll help you in the worst case scenario because you've figured out some problems that were going to affect you either way. But more often than not, you've addressed issues of scale. And those issues of scale are really important. That's the deal about planning big and small. Hard to do, but a very important step to take, and it will prepare you for anything that's in the middle. And often these plans can be reused in the future for similar decisions. The last one, from our clients this week, I've been talking about new structures and new layouts for people's teams. As a team grows, even if it changes to 2 people, or it changes to 4, it changes to 8, figuring out what roles and responsibilities and positions people are going to have and what structure they're going to have that sets it up for success in the future is very important. That is taking the time to say, all right, we're 2 people now, but what is this going to look like when it's 8? What is it going to look like when it's 16? What will it look like when it's 32 or 64? There are some who would say, why fantasize? Don't go all the way there. I'm not saying spend dozens of hours charting it out. I'm saying take and ask yourself, what do you think? What is your best guess as to what the best structure will be? And start there. Start with that plan in mind so that you don't have to redo it every time. So many companies have to redo their structure every time they double in size. And if you're doing that every time you double in size, you're going to be doing it a bunch of times if you're starting as a small company. It's better to say, all right, if we had this many, what do we think it looks like? And then aim towards that. So I've been working on that with my clients. And in their cases, in the 2 that I'm thinking of, I've worked on it with 3, but they have existing staff. So we're looking and saying, all right, what roles do they need to have? What roles do we need to fulfill? And then match them up with the staff, and then look and say, hey, how does this match? How do we make this transition? How do we help our people succeed? How do we prepare them for this? What tools do we need to give them? But creating those new structures has created a lot of success for my clients and has prepared them for growth. Most clients I work with, they're at a spot where we're trying to build a foundation, but also set that foundation as a launch pad for growth. So the more questions we answer now, the more structures we set up, the more processes we get nailed down now, the easier it will be later, and the better it will be as we attempt to escalate and scale. Those are a few thoughts from today. As I said, a lot going on this week, a lot of good news, a lot of success stories. Very glad to encounter those and to get those texts and emails from my clients. I'd love to hear some of your success stories. What's going on in your world? What's going well for you? What can you brag about that has gone well, or a choice that you've made, or a decision that you have done, or a course of action that you have taken that has worked out very well? What has worked and come out well? As you're finding your path, what successes do you have? Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for listening in. Thank you as you have continued to help me find my path. I hope this has an opportunity to help you find yours. See you guys in the next episode.